And in 3, 2, 1, let us begin another episode of the Dense Thinkers podcast. Today we are going to be discussing how disgusting pity is, and how if you feel pity and think you are noble for doing so, you are not. Let us discuss.
You know, it really says a lot about this man's perspective when he writes, I believe it was in the Antichrist, that he writes that a man who pities is worse than a man who commits like acts of evil, and that's pretty damn strong. That says a lot about society, you know, Ryan. Society.
Uh-huh. I know what
But
you're
let's
saying.
talk about pity. Hey Ryan, what is pity?
Pity is when you're feeling sorry for someone else's life and their path. You feel a sense of sorrowfulness inside your soul for the things you are seeing within them. But the question is it a reflection of yourself? Your lack of confidence, your lack of pride in who you are and what it means to be human. You must have great pride in yourself and have a great understanding of how strong we all are as humans. And we mustn't pity people, for that makes them weak. It makes you weak for being pitiful, and it puts upon the person you feel pitiful for a sense of weakness as well. We need to thrive to be strong, to be the best humans we can possibly be, to improve society and become a good member of it. What do you think of that, Ben?
I think that was a pretty good introduction to pity. Where does it come from, Ryan? Do you know where pity comes from?
You know, we have to ask ourselves these things. I think...
Were the Greeks pitying people? Were the Romans pitying people? Where was pity born?
That's a good question. Is it an inherent part of our being to feel pitiful for others? Or is it something that was developed along the timeline of human existence?
I have the answers, Ryan. I know where pity came from.
You tell me where pity came from then.
Think about the section of where was pity, either in Zarathustra or in the Antichrist, where Nietzsche says that that a devil told him that God is dead, God has died for of his pity for man.
That's true. That's true.
So you think about that, and I think back to the Greeks and their philosophies on life, aka Diogenes, that boy spitting hot fire. Don't at my boy Diogenes throwing naked chickens at Plato, being like, this is a man. Sorry. So let me get back on topic here. I get distracted by Diogenes, the wild boy of the West.
There it is. No, not November. Don't bring up my boy Diogenes.
Oh, that's right. He was just jerking off in the middle of marketplaces, bro. He didn't give a fuck, dude. Okay. Pity is a Christian concept for sure. If you think about it in that statement that God is dead, he has died of his pity of man. Think about the concept of original sin, that we are inherently born, what's the descriptor? Born tainted, born impure, and that we are and the original sin makes us a victim, and this is why God pities us. It's a very Christian concept. It's supposed to be from a place of empathy and compassion, but as we will discuss later in this podcast, it's actually our perspective is that it is actually a tool that undermines the strength of a society. How do you feel about that?
I'm not entirely sure. I may disagree or agree. I think most religions have some sort of lines not to cross, and those who do cross it are sinful. And that goes across the board for most religions, you know? If you don't do this, you'll go to hell, and like maybe people will feel pity for those who have lost their way. It's definitely it's definitely an advanced topic to try and discuss because it's trying to pinpoint a point of time when we don't have what we have today with the internet and so many ideals being spewed. It's hard to find the literature that'll really confirm our point there. Definitely with Christianity, where it's sinful. Where Christians are sinful, and they will never not be sinful, and that's why Christ died on the cross, so that we wouldn't have to do like blood sacrifices to atone for sins, or all these other things that you could atone for your sins for, as long as you accepted Christ. Now, that goes into God feeling so pitiful for us that we were unable to conquer our sinful ways, that he sent his son down in order to give us an option that wouldn't involve having to conquer ourselves. Now, with Nietzsche, he really believed that things like pity and compassion for others were used by only weak men. Using those sort of what would that be, ideals for weak men to virtues, exactly, thank you, used by weak men to justify their inability to be in line with their truest self or motivations. They were unable to do that, so they have to feel pity for others. What did Nietzsche call it? The will to power. Man's longing to affect his greatest consequences of his desires on the world around him. So because he is unable to find his motivation, I guess, to overcome himself, he puts that onto others rather than himself, perhaps. What do you think about that?
I don't know if compassion is something that he is against, because he's still, in many sections of Zarathustra, and really in the a theme of the entire book is like an infinite showing of love, and I would think that compassion is in there. I think for sure he has a huge problem with pity, for sure, because that's not coming from a place of love. But I don't know if compassion is also in there. I feel like he has acted in a very, or sorry, I feel like his characters, Zarathustra, has acted in a very compassionate way. I mean, you think of his interactions with, like the ugliest man, or the one dude or the sorcerer who scared him.
Yeah.
It's like these people had very negative effects and were very negative
Okay.
towards Zarathustra, but then he was able at the end to always show them compassion in welcoming them into his home,
Yeah.
like the love thy neighbor from Christianity.
I think I just thought pity and compassion would be synonymous, but yeah, it is a big difference. His stances towards pity and compassion differ a lot, and I kind of forgot about that. But he is pro compassion because you need it in order to analyze the world around you. Pity is how would you call it, a reactionary effect of slave morality. So the big thing is having that slave morality and thinking of yourself as the weak man, you could say. I think a lot of it is just like feeling okay with how pitiful you are yourself, and feeling pity for others as well. When you like let's see, you look at a random homeless person on the street and you feel pity because he doesn't have food and shelter, but that could have been a choice of his self, right? So it's like, why would you feel pity towards him? That could have been, he could have been a Diogenes 2.0. Would you feel pity for Diogenes? Alexander the Great didn't.
He envied him.
Exactly. It's like in this world around us, we all think like, or like in a capitalist society, it's inherently, sort of a disease of people getting like materialistic and being dependent on those materialistic items for their level of success or their status in society. So you know, it's like when someone is without those things, you feel pity, you know, or like what's another example? Perhaps, you know, it's like how you know, massive corporations and people who want to climb the ladder keep you faithful to your work in their job is like giving these superfluous job titles that make you feel empowered to tell others. And so your status as a person is dependent on the title that you receive off of a corporation. You know, it's like a lot of this is like you need to have that power within your what's it called? If like say you get your confidence from compliments, like people saying you look good or you're strong or I don't know, whatever compliments you want, then it's like if your whole confidence or status as a human being is dependent on those compliments, then what's going to happen if you get any criticisms? You know, you need to control yourself and the world within you. You can't control the outer world. So if like you are dependent on things from the outer world to create your happiness or feel your fulfillment in this world, then it's a bit of a problem.
Yeah, that sounds very Eastern as well. The looking within, always going within. Well, I find a lot of his concepts, and I believe he had read and was very familiar with Eastern philosophies, but a lot of the concepts I feel like very much relate to or directly are some of the similar concepts from the Eastern philosophies, like Zen Buddhism. And Taoism. Taoism's the other really big one. That's the yin and the yang, the with and without, all of that. Because I also see the yin and the yang with what you said earlier about overcoming suffering, where you were only defined by not only, but you are defined by what you overcome. It's like a gauge of your personality, your character, and the suffering that you had to overcome. You can think about it as like that is in the yin and the yang world. That would be like the ugly, and then your overcoming of that suffering is the beauty. The beauty and all beauty cannot be defined without having an opposition. That's the whole yin and the yang. So that's like another huge Eastern concept that I find with his work as well.
Yeah. And like the yin and the yang has been used in like so many examples in literature. Like I think I read something about like have you heard about like the story of the wolf, the two wolves? And it's like one is like basically describing like admirable traits in someone, and then the other is evil traits in someone. And it's like which wolf will win within you? It's the one that you feed the most.
Yeah. I've heard that.
But like the yin and yang is like perfect balance, you know. Let's see. Nietzsche is always very complicated, which is like why it takes so much time to like divulge the information. You know, it seems like he's only against compassion and pity when it weakens you. And then the other concept I wanted to hear your opinion on is when the person is feeling pitiful for someone else, it gives them a sense of like moral superiority, right? So like you feel pity for the homeless person and you go to help them, but like if you're helping that person, then you're like the superior being in that situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was gonna talk about that later.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about it later.
No. It doesn't matter like when we talk about it, so we might as well talk about it now. That's obviously something that's come up, so let's talk about it. Yes, that's without going too much into the current zeitgeist and the current culture. That idea is very pervasive. It's the idea that the people or the group that you are trying to quote unquote help with this kind of pseudo compassion, I won't even call it real compassion.
Yep.
It is actually an insult, because you're saying that you, not being a member of that group, has the capabilities that they do not,
Yep.
to help them overcome whatever quote unquote oppressor is oppressing the group or person. But you can do it and they can't, which is like such a joke. I find this whole I'm gonna make a video, and this has to be one of the examples, but like of the fact that we live in a clown world, where like literally literally everything is opposite. Like these people that are trying to preach the most about help and care for fellow man are actually doing them the most disrespect.
Yeah.
So it's a clown world.
Yeah. We can have a whole conversation about that, because there's so many examples in modern day today.
Yeah, like the feminist movement actually like working against women.
Yeah,
it's fucking hilarious. But anyways, that's obviously a huge discussion for another point. But that's what you said is 100% accurate. The whole pitying situation, whether it's you seeing a homeless person and you automatically assuming that they're suffering and they're some sort of victim of this cruel world, when you don't even know them. Like they could be having the fucking time of their life living in a tent. You know what I mean? Like they maybe have overcome the desire for any material possessions, and literally they're just content with, like, they have a dog, they can feed themselves and the dog, they have clothes, and they have a tent, and that's all they really need, and they're like living in paradise. So all of the projection that you put on to other people with these concepts such as pity is so negative and toxic.
Yeah.
You know, and it all comes from within, going back to what you were saying. Like when you see someone who, let's say, is handicapped, let's say they have an amputated arm and they have a fake arm or fake leg. If your immediate thought is that, like, this person, I need to be like nice to this person because like clearly their life is not as good as mine, you are an asshole, 100% an asshole. You're projecting. That's an inner projection. That's a Carl Jung concept. We're always projecting onto the world what we have within ourselves. And so you think that if you were in that situation, you would be like, you would hate yourself. You would be, in a city situation. But there's been so many people that again have overcome that suffering, whether it's losing an arm or overcoming cancer, whatever, and are now stronger. And they might even be stronger and more capable than the person putting pity on them.
Yep.
So.
Exactly. Hey, spit that fire, bro. Spit that fire.
Was that good? I'm trying to...
That was good. That was basically what I was trying to say, and I couldn't find the words to do it. So Nietzsche really believes that suffering is a requirement for finding joy, right? And that pity is all about relieving suffering quickly. And superficially rather than bearing it, right? You want to get rid of this...
Maybe not remove. What did you say about suffering? You said
that bearing suffering is a requirement for joy. Like yeah. And that like pity is about relieving that suffering quickly and superficially rather than bearing it. It's like I would say it takes, like, instead of like relieving, as if it's like some sort of pressure, the suffering, I would say removing the suffering, like taking the suffering away from someone with pity does not allow them to overcome it. You know what I mean? So it's almost like it's more cruel than relieving them. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, sorry, but keep going.
It goes into the whole thing, right? Like, how can you know what it is to be good if you haven't been bad? How do you know how it is to be happy if you haven't been sad? All of these things, like suffering and overcoming it, is like one of the most fulfilling things. It's like trusting the process rather than like using like if you have depression or something, like sure, like you may have a neurochemistry or what's it called, like an imbalance in the brain, right? But I just truly believe that we're all so strong, and like to give up so quickly seems to be such a tendency of the people today. And whether that's like I guess kind of talk about like the Jordan Peterson thing, where he talks about like you shouldn't be weak, you should become a monster and then learn to control it. You know, it's like there's all these things that like it is righteous to be weak or sorry, like it's righteous to
Toothless.
yeah,
Toothless.
It's toothless, yeah, to not have any bark and to not stand up for what is right, but like to do it in a way that is like all caring and I don't know. It's like I think there's a quote somewhere where he talks about like the comfortable and benevolent people for happiness and unhappiness are sisters or something, and they grow up together. I forget where that's from, but something like that. It's like how can someone know what the suffering is of the people if they live in a castle? You know, it's like they will have assumptions of what the people need when they haven't even experienced it themselves. You know, it's like how can you like we'll go back to the homeless example, like or you know, someone who is in society standards a failure or something. How do you truly know if you haven't been in that place? You know, it's like making these brazen assumptions just because of how you believe you would feel and the lack of pride and self-worth you have in yourself and projecting that onto this person. It's very sad, you know?
That's a funny point, because that's 100% right. Is like, if you automatically, you know, you have to trust your instincts, but if you do see a homeless person and your inherent reaction is like sorrow and you do have pity for that person, it's like how much are you, like, it should be a reflection of how much are you dependent on. Like, are you feeling pity because they don't have an iPhone, they don't have a car, they don't have a TV at home, like, and a couch to sit on and watch TV for 8 hours a day? It's like, is that what you're feeling bad for them for not having? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's another way to like peel another layer. It's another way to post. What we're trying to do, people, is we're trying to put the mirror in front of ourselves and help everyone to find their mirror and to better understand who they are, you know, what they're doing, what's coming out of them in these projections.
Oh man,
Because,
sorry,
yeah.
there's, you know, it's like, how can you look at someone else's mirror when you haven't even looked into your mirror? You know?
Yes.
That's
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anyone going around trying to fix other people's problems and they're not the literal coming of Jesus Christ, you know, you got work to do. Clean your room, you know? Stand up with your back straight. Grow some lobster claws, you know? Fight become the top hierarchy, you know?
Yeah.
Become lobster. Oh, what a guy. Listen, that guy, he took 45 minutes to talk about and to read one paragraph of Nietzsche. Like, that's how dense this shit is. It's absurd.
Yeah, and
dense, you get it? Dense.
Dense, dude. Everything is dense.
We're dense. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Ooh, ooh. Let's see here. Do you have you said you wrote down some notes. Is there anything you want to talk about here?
Yeah, he as a lot of, this is like more of a side note about Nietzsche, but he, like, everyone should be familiar with at this point that has read his work. He critiques the living shit out of everything. He is the equivalent of like an archaeologist that's like refining everyone's argument. He's brushing off all these bones to put together their arguments and to show you, the people, and himself, this is actually what they're doing. This is actually what they're saying. Here is their glass castles that they're building, and I have a hammer that will smash into pieces. And this pity is actually, I was just listening to some people talk about it, because I have not read the Antichrist yet. That is still on my list. But I was listening to people talk about the Antichrist and how he does bring up pity quite more in depth. So if we want to understand him better and his perspective of pity, we should read that. But what they're saying is that it's really a direct attack on Schopenhauer, who he was a fan of and who he admired philosophically at the beginning of his young journey. But as Nietzsche grew older, started to better understand, and then eventually kind of, you could say, grow out of and then critique heavily Schopenhauer. And because Schopenhauer, I believe from what the video these fellows were talking about, was saying that pity is essential for compassion. And so here's Nietzsche with a direct attack in the Antichrist on Schopenhauer, talking about pity.
Yeah.
But that's obviously not like we can't really talk about that. There's nothing. That was just like an observation. That there's nothing there. The only other thing that I really have is the because we talked about pity as a projection. We talked about overcoming suffering in relation to yin and yang, and why you need the suffering in order for to define your life. Because you can't just have like if the only thing that was like if the only color that was just white, you wouldn't know it, because you need black, or you need another color to be able to identify white as white. So that's we got that covered. I guess we can jump into the pity with the current culture. I mean, that's a pretty rich subject to talk about, is how, like, where, in what relation to like everyday life do we see this as a problem? You know what I mean? Like, where in culture? Because if it's not relevant, then we should be talking about it. So I feel like we should talk about it.
Yeah. Also, I just wanted to talk about David Goggins really quick.
Yeah, you're gonna suck that PP80 harder in November? Come on, dog.
Dude, yeah. So, let's see, like, the steps of David Goggins. He was fat, overweight, hated himself because of his abusive father. He was living in a shithole, and he was what's the people who like deal with pests? He was pest control. And so he like sat down with himself, and like I think he said that if he met God and God showed him his life, and he saw like just this depressed fat guy sitting in front of the TV doing nothing, just getting basically just a lion in a zoo, just doing nothing with himself, just eating and being like hedonistic in a way, right? Or he showed him the life he could have had and what he was able to achieve. And like in the place that he was before, he would have never believed that he could accomplish these things. And like it's like the Navy SEAL thing and all that. But it's like through extreme like endurance and pain and suffering is where he finds his fulfillment in life. You know, doing these like 100-mile runs where he's like pissing out blood and all this other shit, destroying his body and like facing his fears. The example with he's terrified of the water, but he'll tie his arms and legs behind them, which they do in Navy SEAL training, and does that. You know, he faces his fears, he overcomes himself, and you know, it's like it's not for everybody, right? But it's like I just, it's like you can have such an easy life and not achieve many things, or it's like you can conquer the world you have within yourself. It's like I guess like the simplest way you can do that is like in an ice bath, right? It is absolute torture. Your body is screaming, I want to get out right now, and you endure that pain. And Wim Hof has talked about this. You know, it's like in that pain and suffering, your mind is clear. You know, it's like the only thing that you're enduring is the how your body feels. You can't think about anything else. You're in this extreme cold, harsh environment, and you know, that's one. I think that's like the simplest thing that every single person can do in order to strengthen themselves. And let me tie this into pity, I guess. It's like, yeah, you can pity yourself and say, oh, my leg hurts, so I can't go to the gym, or I can't do this thing because of a affliction I have. But you can always do something, and that's a form of pity in itself. Pity on yourself that you're unable to do these things in a way. You know, it's like no matter, like, even if I had no limbs and legs, I would still try and do sit-ups at least, you know? Do something in order to not feel pitiful for myself. You know, we're human beings, the apex of the animal kingdom, conquered all terrains and environments. And you're saying that we're weak when we can live in the harshest environments from desert to snow? That we've spread all around the world to all these environments, conquered lands, suffering, and endured it all. Like you know, we shouldn't even be here today after the Ice Age. That should have wiped us out completely, yet we survived. And the fact that, like, there's, like, a perpetual ideology that it's okay to be weak and it's okay for this, I just don't agree with it, you know?
Well, listen, Ryan, you talked a whole bunch, but none of it made sense. All right, listen, you think we made it through the Ice Age, Ryan? Hello? You don't remember the alien encounter of 1776 where they gave us the information? They gave us the documents, Ryan. They genetically modified us to endure that period of time. Brother, we've been changed. We're not the same people that were walking around tens of thousands of years ago. Wake up, Ryan. I need you to wake up. We are aliens. Neat. Dude, there's a dude called Zachariah Sitchin, and he talks about, it's a little fun side tangent. He talks about this planet called Nibiru that's past Pluto that comes in contact with Earth every like 3,000 years, and that on that planet are aliens, and a few revolutions ago when the planet was in contact with ours, they came and genetically modified certain species of chimpanzees and spliced their DNA with them. And certain species of people have more alien, like their DNA than other species of people. And the purpose was for us to mine gold because they needed gold on their planet because they were particleizing gold to put in their atmosphere because they had no atmosphere. So the gold was to reflect the sun so they could like live on their planet. And I'm like, wait a minute, weren't we trying to do that on here? Wasn't Bill Gates talking about like particleizing gold in the atmosphere to reflect sun so our planet? I'm like, huh? I'm like, Bill Gates, you're talking about the same thing that this crazy guy is talking about, like in his book about aliens and splicing chimpanzee DNA, dude? Like, what?
Yeah, well, that's where the chemtrail conspiracy comes from. That they're spraying, that they're spraying barium, aluminum, and two other metals into the sky to reflect the sun.
Yeah.
And like that was a conspiracy, and then what's it called? Harvard released basically a proposal for a plan in order to do that.
Yes. I'm like, y'all like dumb as hell. Like, quite frankly, I don't care that you work at Harvard and you study there and you have a PhD and this and that. It's like, how many times do we need to play God and see the fallout of our attempt to play God?
Yeah, it's
before we realize, like, hey, you know what? Maybe we should stop this shit. Like, bro, like, you don't think, like, my head immediately goes to those sci-fi movies. You're gonna put stuff in the atmosphere to reflect the sun. It's not gonna be as you predicted because you writing numbers on paper is not in any way, shape, or form that connected to like reality. So they're gonna put the stuff in the sky. It's gonna reflect the sun, and we're gonna induce an ice age, just like as if a super volcano erupted.
Yeah.
And then we're all gonna die.
And it's like,
so thanks, Bill Gates.
Yeah, and one of the major components they were talking about spraying in the environment was aluminum, and that's the
dude, that's in like deodorant, dude.
Yeah, but that's one of the biggest causes of Alzheimer's and other neurological problems in the brain. So it's like,
doesn't it?
So
haven't there been like?
Yeah, there's been studies for like people who have Alzheimer's have like heavy I'm not sure the terminology, but like heavy amounts of aluminum in the brain.
Not only that, but I'm pretty sure I've seen actual microscopic footage of them putting aluminum in contact with like a neuron from the brain and how it deteriorates the neuron. And I'm like, whoa, dude. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. So let's return to the force. Anyways, back to pity.
Yeah, what are we talking about, dude? Are we pitying the world right now?
We gotta bring it back. We gotta throw the lasso around this crazy bull and pull it back. I know it's November, so the bull's a little crazy this month, but we gotta pull back the bull. And because there was actually there was a few things I wanted to talk about that you were bringing up, but now we have to gotta recollect our thoughts on pity. There, we gotta see what was the last thing we were talking about with pity. Oh, sorry. Before we jump back into that, I do have to say I would like to add to your points about the strength of humanity and how current culture is kind of emphasizing, and current culture is kind of reinforcing the idea that strength is bad and weakness is good. But before, let me write that down. Before diving into that, strength bad, weak good. Before jumping into that, the examples you were giving of doing the ice bath, that we learned from Wim Hof and all that good stuff. It's not that you have to treat, if anyone here is a fellow meathead and understands the body and how to grow the body's muscles with weight, it's a perfect analogy for life. You have your body, and when you don't work out your body, your muscles, when you don't exercise, your muscles atrophy and they wither away, because if you don't use it, you lose it, right? And how do you strengthen the muscles of the body is you put positive stress via weights. You do weight resistant training, and what that does is it puts a positive and, more importantly, a controlled amount of stress on the body, and your body has to adapt, because we have to remember we're no longer chasing deer in sub-zero temperatures in order to survive, but our body still needs those positive stressors in order to grow or in order to stay healthy. Just like you need to run your car every day, because if you don't, then it just sitting there is actually worse for it and it'll deteriorate faster. Same thing with the body. And so with the ice, by exposing yourself, there's been a lot of data, the science is in, the consensus is in, doing the sauna at 170 degrees for 20 minutes a week, I believe, or 20 minutes 4 times a week. Big difference, but you get the point. And same thing with ice exposure, like an ice bath is best, but cold shower can do just fine. If you do that a few times a week, that controlled positive stress on the body will get your body to respond to those stresses in a way in which it strengthens itself. It has, because you have to remember, within us, we've always had, and we will always have those abilities to overcome the cold, whether it's like releasing certain, whether it's your nervous system responding to it and releasing whatever it releases. There's something that does happen that helps you overcome the cold if you expose yourself like regularly to it. Because we were, like you said, we survived the Great Bering Strait, where we crossed from Russia to Canada, and for tens of thousands of years in the cold like that, in the Ice Age. So like we have that in us, and just like a car has oil in it, if you don't move that oil around, the car actually starts to degrade, and so does your body. So I just wanted to, add that point to your stress point.
Yeah. And dude, stop thinking you're weak, people. I'm sick of it.
Well, dude, even Nietzsche fucking said it. He says it like a bajillion times, but one of his favorite quotes that I've plucked from Thus Spoke Zarathustra is that, yes, you are a flower, and the dew hangs off your leaf and it pulls you down, but don't think yourself so weak. You're much more resilient than you think you are and you give credit to. And, that's something that our current culture does not condone and does not push, is for strength. It's actually pulling for weakness. And it's like, again, under the guise of compassion. It's like, no, people shouldn't have to worry about whatever. They shouldn't have to worry about I don't know, what's a good example here that like society is preaching for that's weakness. If you have something, like, you can jump in, because I'm trying to actually think of one.
Yeah. What's it called?
I want to make sure it's like a prime example. I don't want to just, because I have examples in my head, but I don't want to I don't want to come off as crude. So I'm trying to make sure it's a refined idea.
Yeah. I just want to talk about like pity again, and empathy is overrated, right? It's like if you're a self-respecting if you're a self-respecting person, let me finish. Self-respecting person, I
will
would
not let
I
you
would
do this.
never want pity, right? I don't care if I've lost limbs, if I've lost all of my possessions. I would not want pity. I don't want people to only give me empathy or whatever because of the pitiful situation that I'm in. You know, I want people um, to keep those sort of ideals to themselves. If you truly believe, I don't think one self-respecting person would want pity of another person. And this goes into like the like human suffering thing. It doesn't stem from life is suffering. We just have a misguided understanding of what we can control and what we don't. When we try and control these things that are around us that we can't do anything about, then suffering is inevitable. You know, I'm not going to show pity nor merriness. I'll approach you know, any situation with a problem-solving mind. If you have a problem, you know, I can help someone solve it, but only if they wish. Their wish is important. Like you shouldn't put upon your help to others who don't wish for it. You know, and I think that's a big problem that we'll talk about in, you know, that conversation we were talking about earlier. You know, so many people enjoy melodrama and shared problems. Oh, it's like, oh, we all have the same problems. You know, they don't want help. They just want to moan and complain about their problems among each other and how similar they are. It's like a parasitic vermin, you know? You know, I don't want to mingle with people who want to gossip and talk about, oh, I'm so sorry about myself. Oh, you're sorry about yourself? You know, I want people who are dependent on their own strength and believe in their self. You know, if you go out and you go, I want to save the world, everyone cannot be saved, and it's not anyone's job to do so. We should save ourselves, right? We should empower people that they have the ability to save themselves. It's like the story of like a princess in the tower waiting for her prince to come. You know? Who knows if that's going to come? Or you could go out of that tower, figure out how to escape, and find that prince for yourself. You know, a lot of these stories and everything are just so pitiful and dependent on others for helping you and saving yourself. You know, letting nature take its course, accept the end result, trust the process that you have gone forward with, whatever. But you know, if you see someone weeping in grief because their child has died or left, or they suffered in affairs, or you know, distinguish in your mind. It's not the incident that distresses this person. It's the distress of another because it doesn't distress another person. That's within themselves, and it's their duty to overcome that within themselves. I think Epictetus said something about that, but never mind.
Epic titty?
Yeah, epic titty, boy. At the end of the day, like, sure, empathy is good because you know, Nietzsche believes that that's how you are able to like kind of view and understand the world around you. But wow, do you want someone to show you empathy? You know, someone the feeling bad for another person. I don't know.
I can talk if you. I've got some. I've got a good. I have a really strong example for the current culture and its pity of ourselves, of its fellow man.
Okay, let's go.
But are you? I don't want to cut you off if you're still making.
Oh no, I'm done.
Yeah. No, I was just ranting endlessly. I was just fucking blabbering.
Yeah.
All right. So this is let's I'm gonna reframe the argument here just so our listeners, all one of you or can refresh on the subject. So we're talking about pity. We're talking about it. We're talking about the critique of pity and how our current culture is actually kind of really pushing the idea of pity as a virtue and why that's a bad thing. So, the example I'm giving here are on school campuses. I have been graduated for some time now, so I'm not up to date on exactly what's going on. But when I was last there, they had safe spaces where you could go if you felt antagonized by criticism and you felt as if people. Another big one was microaggressions. So this is a prime example of the perpetuation of weakness over perpetuation of strength. Criticism is a good thing. Criticism is a mirror that you can look at yourself in. Criticism is at the foundation of science, people. A true scientist will be his harshest critic, but a true scientist is also a profoundly knowledgeable and wise individual. I don't mean scientists like, oh, you're a biochemist or you're a microbiologist. I'm talking about science in the philosophical sense of the quest of knowledge and like the testing of hypotheses. Because science is very overreaching. It's a very broad, encompassing subject. But I'm bringing up scientists and them being their harshest critic because criticism is very foundational in their process in overcoming and understanding and growing and becoming stronger and positing strong ideas into the world, strong truths into the world. And when you turn criticism into this dangerous thing that, oh no, your professor can't tell you you're wrong when you answer a question wrong because it's a microaggression, because it makes you feel bad and you have to run to your little safe space with your little binky and your little diaper, that's not strengthening society, but that's what they're pushing. That's what they want. They want everyone to, and again, think about it. It's technically coming from the right place, but it's executed horribly. It's coming from the right place in the sense that they're trying to help people. That's what they're trying to do, and that's why it's a very complicated subject, because what they're trying to do is good. They're trying to help people. How they're going about that is by making them weaker, which is actually hurting them. If you think about the human being, I know we're a meat sack, a balloon of blood, pretty much like a cat can scratch you and you might bleed to death. Like it's fucking hilarious. But I know we're like that. But imagine that you have this hard wooden structure, or okay, even better example. Think about you have a clay sculpture and it's dry and it's hard and it's refined and it has strong points of definition. But then you see a little bit of cracking maybe, and so what you do is you put water on it because you're trying to reform it. But then you put too much water on it and it starts to get mushy and it starts to break down and it loses its detail and it crumbles because of the water that made it soft. That, I believe, is a good analogy for what is going on currently, which is, again, just to wrap it up full circle so I can hear Ryan's point, is that they are trying to perpetuate weakness as a good thing, that your feelings are more important than whatever facts or whatever, or literally anything. Like, your feelings are the most important thing, because how you feel like emotionally is equivalent to how you feel physically, and they're taking that in some very perverted ways. They're making that the virtue, and they're making strength and overcoming and growing and power as bad.
Yeah.
Go in, Ryan. I know you got a shit ton to say about safe spaces, doggy.
Dude, you want another hour or what?
We really could go on.
Let's wrap this thing up.
Okay.
All I've got to say, people, is don't pity others. Don't pity yourself. Sure, you can have empathy for others, but find that strength within. If other people see how strong, if you were once weak and you become strong, that'll only inspire others. You don't need to have this moral superiority to others who are not in the same position that you are. If you're in a good position in life, allow it to be an inspiring event for them to find their own path. We must all suffer and fall into the great void in order for us to figure out how to climb out of it. If you're shrouded in a veil of darkness, find that cinder and put fresh twigs upon it to make it into a roaring bonfire. That's all I have to say.
Yes, Ashen One. Yes, Ashen One, the great Elden Ring is upon us. I will also end on a point, if I may, which is that strength and beauty comes from within. To tie it back to the Eastern perspectives, if you think too much and value other people's opinions of yourself, you give them the power over you. You give the power to them to dictate how you feel, because now you feel sad when they say things you don't like about you. So it's important to remember that the true strength and true beauty comes from within. You are stronger indeed, as Ryan says, than you think you are. You're much stronger. We're infinitely stronger. Pity will only make you weak and make the people around you weak. It's time to fight back against pity. It's time to promote strength, as Ryan also said, as an inspirational point to encourage everyone else to continue to get stronger and to overcome these challenges of life that are inherent to the tragic existence that is man. So let's get out there and let's get this bread.
All right. All the power and all the love. Goodbye.
That's right. Thanks, Wilhelm Hoff.